Yo, what's up? It's Greg Friel here again, once again at the Friel Thing podcast. Second time lucky. We tried doing this on Riverside.fm. Major technology issues. So we're on Zoom. So if you want to complain about the quality, then shut up. Anyway, so I'm here with the legend that is Darren Christie. I can't even say his name. Darren Christie.
To be fair, mate, I've been called worse, so it's all right.
Well, I hear you've been known as, the Big D, which sounds slightly suspect. Penfold, reference to 80s Danger Mouse cartoon. Cameron Diaz's ex. I'm not sure that's strictly true, but we'll get to that. We need to get to that. But
why would you let the truth get in the road of a good story?
No. Exactly. I mean, I'm like, let's push the story. The story's good. Absolutely. So for the folks at home, a quick 30 seconds on who you are and what it is that you do.
All right, so my name is Darren Christie. You can probably tell my accent. I've born and raised in the west of Scotland. But from my own point of view, I work for an organisation called People Plus. And the whole point of what we do is to help unemployed people of Glasgow back into work. That's a very long story cut short, but essentially that's what we're here for. We're here to help unemployed job seekers get as much help and support as they can to then move them into sustainable work.
Fantastic. Well done. Elevator pitch. Sorted. I was thinking last night in preparation for this, because I'm vaguely professional. I'm thinking, do your research, Greg, which involved me going, when did I meet Darren? And I'm thinking it was about 5 years ago.
Yeah, it wouldn't be far off that, mate, because I actually thought about this myself. Because there's a few people, so we're probably going to talk about this, but the networking event I host, there's a few people who I've never met that come to the networking event, which is great. But you and I met, must be 5 years ago at least. And I want to say the Village.
I
want to say the Village was the first place, maybe.
Possibly. I was thinking it was the first time I remember actually having a conversation with you, although I may have seen you at other events because you're quite noticeable. I think the first time I actually had a conversation with you was at Partick Thistle Football Club.
Yes.
And you were talking.
There's every chance. Yeah, that could be right.
Yeah, and you were chatting to Leanne McConnell, and came over and I had a chat, and you knew her, and I just met her, and blah blah blah. And were you working in finance or something like that at the time?
No, so I would have been working in recruitment at the time. So when I first started going to kind of networking events as such, my background, I suppose in essence, my background was I played golf for years, and then I came back to Scotland. I fell into recruitment. I then had a few recruitment roles. And when I first came back and I started this networking thing, when you turn up and there's like a squad, like loads of people in the one room. I remember the first networking event thinking, what is all this? Like all these people in the one place. So when I first started networking, when you and I probably first met, I was working in recruitment, mainstream recruitment.
Right. Because I mean, no disrespect, but I think you've had about 5 jobs.
Yeah, it's been a journey, mate.
Yeah, absolutely. But I think the thing really that actually unites all of this, though, is generally the fact that you're a people person. It always comes down to people and relationships.
Yeah, I've been quite fortunate. The last couple of jobs I've been in, I'm in them. Yes, I have moved a little bit recently, but I've been asked by people to come work for them, which is nice, and I think that's a kind of testament to the fact that I'm quite a happy big guy. And yeah, people skills has always been something that's kind of got me by in life. So yeah, the last couple of roles I've been in, I've been asked. Nice to be asked to come along and work for these organisations. So so it's been nice. Considering I train and coach people on job searching and CVs, I've not actually had to do much of it myself.
Yeah, I know what you mean. It's you kind of like, yeah, I mean, don't you know that? It's like, oh, and then you kind of like, oh yeah, hold on, I've never really had to do that myself.
Yeah, I don't really do that much.
Yeah. So let's go way back to when you're a wee boy. I mean, obviously, I mean, for those of you, for those people who know you, they know that you're massively into your golf and to the extent that you were a pro golfer one time, and and I'm sure there's countless stories you could tell there, but we don't have that kind of time there. But tell us about whenever you were growing up, were you thinking, I want to be a footballer? Because I know you're into your football as well. Or was golf one of these things that you kind of got into really, really young and it was like, that was it, this is what I want to do?
No, like not at all. I think for a boy who grew up where I grew up, so like I'm from the west of Scotland. I grew up in Glasgow and Paisley. Everybody I grew up with loved football, and generally speaking, you would support one of two football teams. But as a kid, I just loved football, and when I was younger, like my dad was kind of into his football and stuff like that. My dad used to run my kind of local football teams and stuff like that. So we would be very much involved in football. And I was really lucky when I was younger that I got to the point where I was the old YTS program. So I was a YTS with Dundee at football. And I always remember this. It was one Sunday, I think it was just before my 14th birthday. My football was cancelled because the weather wasn't great. Now, my dad, you wouldn't exactly call him a golfer. My dad's idea of golf is 6 cans in the bag, day out type of golf. He's not what you would call a golfer. So he was having a golf day with the boys. And one of the lads cancelled, and my dad said, well, look, one of the boys is called off. Do you want to come along and play with us? And I was like, Dad, golf? No, like, not happening, not my thing. and if you're thinking about it, no. Mm-hmm. And I always remember this, he said to me, well, if you come along, we'll stop at the shops and we'll get some stuff and then we'll pop into McDonald's on the way home. And I was like, oh, sold. I'll come along. So like I started playing. We went to Lynn Park Golf Club, which is in south side of Glasgow, and my granddad's old clubs, kind of typical story. Started playing, and the very first shot I hit quite well. And I always remember my dad saying to me, "Can I do that again?" and hit it again. And my dad then turned around and said, I remember turning to my dad and saying, "Is that not what you're supposed to do?" And my dad's exact words were, and apologies for anyone if this offends them, not the first time you hit a golf shot, you wee dick. To which, so then started playing in the local golf club at the time in Paisley. We're doing a junior membership for 50 quid. So my dad said, look, we'll get your membership and we'll take it from there. Started playing when I was 14, turned pro when I was 18. It was just one of the things I picked up really quickly. Handicap plummeted down quite quickly. So for a guy who's been on to kind of do all right at golf, I didn't really have a big. You hear about all these people who had big junior careers and blah blah blah. I wasn't that guy because I didn't really start getting good enough till I was kind of 17, 18 to really start competing. Just I was late to the party, so yeah. Turned the system when I was 18. Played a little bit here, but got delusioned with the fact that a lot of times when people turn pro here, they work in a golf shop, and that's actually all you do. You don't actually get to play golf. So you live this big dream comes around and you think, oh, I'm going to play golf all the time, and you watch a telly and it's like Tiger Woods and blah blah blah. And no, it's nothing like that. So it's literally sitting. So basically, you sit in a shop and you work in a golf shop. So turning professional at the level I did. I mean, I wasn't elite level stuff. You basically are allowed to work in a golf shop. And that's it. So I get sick of selling Mars bars and woolly jumpers, effectively thinking it and telling everybody I was a golf pro on £125 a week on my golfing apprenticeship. And then effectively what happened was a guy I know was offering, it was doing football scholarships or soccer scholarships out in the States. Nice. And had said to me, look, I've got a lot of contacts out there. If you want to go to America, I can get you a scholarship out in the States. And at the time I was just about to turn 21 and thought that's a much better option than sitting in the shop. So took the scholarship, went to the States and ended up spending 5.5 years there.
Wow. Which
was amazing. So it's just a great experience.
And whereabouts were you based?
So my first year was in North Carolina. And then I effectively signed for a bigger school, bigger team. Moved to Tennessee, spent 3 years in East Tennessee, and then I graduated and properly turned pro, moved down to Florida, and I was the head assistant down at LPG International down in Daytona Beach. So I spent, I was a year and a half, I was about 14, 15 months in Daytona. And then I came home for Christmas. Christmas 2009, I came home for a 6-week holiday. Mm-hmm. and it's been a long Christmas.
So what made the change? What made you not go back?
Go back for family, buddy. So when I was growing up, I wasn't exactly what you would call on the agenda. My mum had me when she was 17. So I was kind of brought up quite a lot with my grandparents, and my little granny fell sick, and that was the reason I was coming home for Christmas. And I think just coming home and seeing family and getting back into Scotland. I mean, it's funny, like I was one of these people that became more Scottish when I left. So I left.
I think that's what happens. It's just, and I think the thing is as well, I mean, as you know, I mean, I'd spent some time in New York when I was a kid, and they just love the accent, and it's just, and you kind of like, I'm just opening my mouth and speaking, and they're just like, oh my God, you get an accent. I'm like, so do you?
Like when you go out there, and especially, and you probably appreciate this, and Scottish people do this when they go on holiday, when you bump into another Scottish person when you're away, instant best mates, because it's someone else that actually speaks like the same way that you speak. But yeah, like I had an amazing time, an amazing experience. And what had actually happened when you first go, you get a 5-year visa when you first go. Right. And I was at the stage of getting the next stage of the visa and blah, blah, blah. But it was like $3,500 for the next stage of the visa. So I was very much in the kind of, am I doing this? Am I not doing this? Because once after that, that's you pretty much into kind of citizenship and living there and life is in America, pretty much. And
how did you find the adjustment? I mean, because I know what it was like for me. I mean, you were older. I mean, I was 7 when I went over. So it's just, and it was very, very different then, it was just like the culture shock was just huge.
Yeah. So moving to the South, mate. So the deep, dirty South in North Carolina and Tennessee, it's culturally very different, and it's very, very different from what you probably experienced in New York. It's a very friendly atmosphere, but it's just a strange. There's a lot of racism in the South, which is part of the reason why you're seeing a lot of the kind of Black Lives Matter stuff that's kicking off. It has been for to be honest, it's been like this for a long time. It's just now, I kind of feel like someone's put a label on it, and it's now starting to get a bit of traction in social media and stuff like that, which is great because it needs more exposure. But some of the stuff I witnessed when I was over there beggars belief, both from white and black. It wasn't a so culturally it was just very different. There's probably the best way I can explain it in America and compared to Scotland is, one, they're very, very friendly if they're all of the same type. I felt as if when I lived there that it was very kind of divided, so people stayed with their own type. And me being a bit of a social butterfly, I would kind of float around and speak to everybody and kind of get on with everyone. And a lot of people just didn't understand that, didn't understand how, as a Scottish person or as anyone getting out there, how you could be so friendly with everyone rather than just sticking to your own.
I mean, I found, I mean, no disrespect to my American friends, but there is quite a lot of an insular attitude to
massively.
A lot of Americans, and it's like there's just nothing beyond America, So in terms of
I'll give you a very, very quick example of this. So my communications, so I went out on a scholarship, which means I do a university degree out there, and my communications class, we had to pick a subject and talk about it for 10 minutes in front of a full auditorium in a university. And I was really struggling to pick something, but I thought the easiest thing I could talk about was my journey to America. And getting out there. So one of the things I decided to do was, right off the bat, I was going to pick someone in the auditorium who had been abroad and talk about their experience in America, their experience abroad versus my experience coming to the States. And I thought, big man, you've smashed that. That's a great idea. Like, absolutely brilliant. Really excited about this. Stood up in front of the auditorium and I said, who in here, been in the auditorium, 250, 300 people? Who in here, or when was the last time someone was abroad? Tumbleweed. Who in here has been abroad? I then said, who in here has a passport? One person who was a lecturer put their hand up, and it just kind of let me see that they only ever see their own little bubble. They only ever see what's in their little world. And they don't ever get to see anything else. They don't ever get to talk about anything else. Even in the States, there was quite a few people I went to school with who hadn't been any further than 20 miles from their house for their whole life.
Yeah.
Which to me just blew my mind.
Yeah.
Crazy. But yeah, it was like the whole America thing was a great experience for me, because I think for me, it also opened my eyes to the way other people live, the way other people go about their lives, the way other people, and there's a lot of positives to living in the South. It's such a friendly culture. It's such a friendly environment. I remember Thanksgiving, which is a huge thing for people in the States. The very first Thanksgiving I was there, I must have had a dozen invites to come to their family, and Thanksgiving for them is like Christmas Day. So
yeah,
these people they didn't
very
have to invite me. Massively, hugely welcoming culture.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's different from us, and I think that was the part that I kind of struggled with initially, was because I probably wasn't prepared. See, because when you watch American movies and they speak English and various other things, there's probably a preconceived idea that they're quite similar to us and how we operate and stuff like that, mainly because they speak the same language. And they're not. I mean, they do think differently, they operate differently, which isn't a bad thing. It's different. And I think for me, that was the thing that I wasn't ready for when I first went out.
I mean, I think the thing for me was, I mean, I was at the age where, your formative years in school, and, kids are going to be interested in here in the UK, it would be where you're starting to get into football and that kind of thing. And in the States, it's baseball and American football literally from the moment you're born.
Yep.
So when I went over there, literally, I was like, what even is this? I have no idea what this is. So I immediately felt alienated because I had no idea about sport or anything. So then when I traveled back to Glasgow again, I knew nothing about football. So like sport was this divisive thing for me. It was kind of like, it was the thing that made me feel like I didn't belong to the culture because I didn't grow up with it one way or the other. You know what I mean?
Greg, funnily, I had almost the exact same experience. And the hard thing for me was I went out to America because of sport, but because I wasn't into American sports. So like you're saying, American football and baseball. Mm-hmm. So I went out in 2004, and I remember thinking, out to play sport, I'll connect with all the athletes and blah, blah, blah. And they were start chatting about American football. I always remember this. Someone asked me, who do you think's a better quarterback between Peyton Manning and Tom Brady? And I was like, quarterback, is that the guy that throws it? Is that the guy that does that thing? Absolute disgust in the fact that I had mentioned this. But because, and I mean, I know American football and stuff like that's becoming a lot bigger now, but when I went out in 2004, wasn't shown in the UK at all. So I had no interest or no knowledge of who these people were. And they were, in the States, they are superstars. So Manning and Brady was a bit like, I suppose you take Messi and Ronaldo when it comes to football or whatever else. They are absolute icons and gods, but never knew who they were.
Well, that was the thing. I mean, there was a time when I really got into baseball back here, and I used to watch it on Channel 5. It was on a Sunday night, and it was on until like 3-4 o'clock in the morning. And like I was like thinking I was keeping pretty up to date with everything that was going on. And then you talk to anybody in America or whatever, I'm like, where are they getting all of this additional information from? Kind of like, I thought I was, pretty up to date with what was happening. But I'm like, do you know, like this guy's family and everything? I'm like, what? So I think it's so ingrained as part of the culture, and sports such a huge thing. And it is actually in a lot of ways, I think, what it is to be American. These sports kind of encapsulate the American ideal.
Oh, massively. And do you know the one thing I really appreciated, I loved when I was out there? They are phenomenally passionate fans.
Yeah.
Without the hatred.
Absolutely, yeah.
So like here, obviously you get your Rangers and Celtic thing, and I remember that the very first football game I went to was a big local rival game. And I suppose like for me, I had this kind of Rangers and Celtic thing in my head, like, we're going to go and play our rivals. It's going to be like this big hatred thing. And the old American, like that. Yeah, I just thought it was going to be like the Wild West. We turn up and we're like 4 hours early because we're tailed for a football game, and you're there 4 hours before. I don't know why we don't do this here, but 4 hours before, and it's just bevy and barbecue.
Mm-hmm.
And they had me at hello. So you turn up early and you just have a few beers and guys have got barbecues built up, and it's just a big friendly cultural atmosphere before the game, and the fans are together. So like a lot of people, typical American thing, they've got pop-up tents, they've got various other things, and you would literally have one set of fans with one tent and another set of fans with another tent right next to each other in the car park before the game.
Not
there is
killing each other.
No way. I mean, like if you take Rangers and Celtic games, so much so that Central Station has to get segregated.
It's insane. It really is.
It's just mental. So it as much as there was, strangely, there was some divide over there. There was a lot of things that they'd done very differently from us, which actually brought a lot of people together. So it was it was a great experience, and I loved it. But after kind of 5.5 years from me, it was kind of time. It was kind of time to come home, and then when I came home, I was literally home for about 2 or 3 days. I thought,
and you knew.
I've missed this. I've missed the banter. I've missed being able to talk to people and not have to put on like a fake Gerard Butler accent type thing, which absolutely killed me. And I always remember this, like I'd phone home, and all my American friends who would listen to the phone call would say, "Oh my God, I couldn't understand a single word that you were saying on the phone." And in the same phone call, I've got my dad on the phone saying, "Why are you talking like that, mate? That's not the way I brought you up."
It's such a strange thing. So I think the thing is, the other cultural thing as well, and especially like to do with humor, is that, you know, Americans largely don't understand British humor, and they don't get irony, and they don't get when you're just kidding around, and you know, that kind of thing. I posted a picture on Facebook last week, and I was obviously taking the piss, right? I had this app, and it took my photo and it put it on a painting in the Louvre in Paris, right? And
I'm surprised a lot there, mate.
And I just said, you know, so without any emojis or anything, I said, something so delighted to finally see my face up in the Louvre. Nothing like a wee wink, nothing, just like deadpan, right? And most people were like, funny, blah blah blah. A couple of American people were like, "What did you do to warrant being put up in a museum? Congratulations!" And I'm like, "What?" I mean,
Greg, I tell you, do you know one of the big things I really struggled with, and I dare say most people in Scotland will be the same here. In my family, being slagged is like a term of endearment. It's like it's an acceptance thing. So if my family feel like they can slag you, then it's almost like you're accepted into the family, like you're kind of part of the family. And over there, that's absolutely not the case at all. So, like, obviously, when I feel as if I'm starting,
he's so rude. I can believe how rude he is.
Did you actually hear the way he spoke to me? I mean, that is just downright ridiculous. So, yeah, so so like going out there and trying to get banter, or trying to kind of get a bit of playful chat with someone. Or the worst thing in the world is when you kind of crack a joke, and then you explain the joke, and then people go, "Yeah, that wasn't funny." And I'm like, "Yeah, it's never funny when you need to actually like explain."
No joke is funny when you have to go into, yeah, exactly.
Especially when you need to go into detail as to why it's funny.
So, I mean, what was it you said to Cameron Diaz to kind of get her on side then?
To kind of fill people in here, unfortunately, I was never Cameron Diaz, his ex, apart from in my dreams. Then I woke up and had my cornflakes. But yeah, worked at a summer camp in the States. It's one of the most expensive summer camps out there. By the way, I knew none of this before I went out. And the camp itself was a camp called Camp Winookie, Camp Winnipesaukee on Lake Winookie. Easy for me to say.
I was just going to say easy for you.
And the camp itself, for 51 days at camp, the parents pay $14,500. And that was 2006, 2007. So I dare say it's probably higher now. But anyway, because of the level of money you're talking about, a lot of the people who went there, the kids were parents of bajillionaires. A lot of them were mental money. And one of the kids, like, there's lots of stories of kids on the board at Apple, or one of the kids, Eric Tellum, his dad's Alan Tellum, who's the second highest paid sports agent in America. But his mum makes more money than his dad, because at the time his mum was the president of CBS. Just crazy stuff like that.
Oh, right, okay.
Yeah, just like, and by the way, dropped into conversation as if Well, is your parents not? And I'm like, no, my dad's a Spark. So the camp itself at day 25, parents or loved ones could come along for Parents' Day. And the other thing about the camp as well is Ken Carter, who's Coach Carter, was the basketball coach, just to put it in the context of what this camp is actually like.
Isn't that Samuel Jackson played that in the
Samuel L. played him in a movie, and just the most intimidating, amazing guy I've ever met, ever. I believed every single word that came out of his mouth, just had that demeanour about him. But anyway, so day 21, and Cameron Diaz is at camp because her friend's kids are at camp. And by the way, kids haven't cracked the light that mum's best mate's Cameron Diaz.
Right, okay, they don't know.
Haven't cracked the light. Is it because just everybody's... Is your mum's best mate not like that?
Oh, right, I see. Right, got it. Right,
yeah, just not cracked the light.
Normal. It's not a big deal.
So day 25 pitches up, and I'm like, and did not handle this well at all. And I was like, anyway, so we kind of got to meet the parents and meet whatever else, and I spoke to Cameron very, very, very briefly, and she said, "Oh, are you from Glasgow?" And by the way, nobody used to get the fact I was even from Scotland with my accent.
Mm-hmm.
So the fact that she knew I was from Glasgow, I was absolutely blown away. She then starts talking about how the fact that she's done some filming in Glasgow, loves the city, Scotland's her favourite country to visit, blah, blah, blah. And I'm sitting there trying to actively keep my tongue from dropping to the floor. I was like, oh my God, you are like the nicest and most amazing person I've ever met in my life. And so anyway, later that day, I've got a bunch of kids and I'm walking them to a certain part of the island that we're on, and I kind of waved over to a few people, and Cameron shouted over, "Oh, hi Darren," and I melted. Folded like a pack of cards, did not handle it well, had that whole kind of high pitch squeak, "Oh, hi Cameron." Never dealt with it at all. And the worst part about it was the kids I had at the time were like 14, 15, 16-year-old boys. Who proceeded to absolutely rip me,
destroy you,
like completely, and had no comeback for them whatsoever. Because you know when you always like you probably have these moments in your life that you think you'll deal with them better than you actually do, and I thought, yeah, I'll be smooth and I'll just talk with a Scottish accent because she loves it and blah blah. And no, it never happened. Not even close.
I always remember many years ago speaking to my grandmother, who was an actress, and I said to her, what's it like, meeting somebody famous? I mean, what say like, and obviously it was a long time ago. I was like, what if I met Michael Jackson? Like I might get like really starstruck. And she gave me the single greatest piece of advice, and I swear to God, I live by this advice. She said, "Greg, think of it this way: you're not meeting them; they're meeting you."
I love that.
And I'm like, yes. So like, you mean Greg Friel? That's it. And it's just like you make that mental switch, and it's just like, yeah, go. I'm all right. I mean, it's fine.
Yeah.
So you come back and you stay.
Yes.
When was that?
So I came back Christmas of 2009.
2009, right?
So it was basically start of 2010 is when I effectively decided to stay in Scotland.
And did you kind of think, okay, well, in your head, were you kind of thinking that's me done with golf, or it's just like I don't want to go back to America, I want to actually spend time with my family?
No, so like, golf was pretty much done. I was kind of starting to get a bit sick of it. I wasn't good enough to make it, big time make it. Good enough to kind of play at a decent level and make some money from it and stuff like that, but not good enough to make it. So I went down to Florida. I was playing a little bit, realised very, very quickly that the standards is just a joke. And as good as I thought I was, not anywhere near at the races. So started coaching a lot, and I was coaching a lot, and life was good, living in Florida. And then when I came home, I suppose like when you live in a bubble and you kind of forget about everything else and whatever. And then when that bubble was busting, I came home and found everything else, and I was like, I don't know what, it's actually not that important to me. Like, it's not as important to me as I thought. And so many people say to me, like when I say I used to play golf professionally in Daytona, and there's so many people saying, "Oh, I'd give my right arm for that." And I'm like, yeah, but see, when you live somewhere and you've got to pay bills and you've got to do washings and you've got to do everything else, it becomes a bit less sexy, albeit the weather's decent.
Yeah, well, weather's decent, but it's all the other stuff, geography,
Everything else, mate. So
and it's the cultural stuff. At the end of the day, there is that simple fact of the matter is, it doesn't matter how long you live there or whatever, there is that sense that, do I really belong here?
yeah, and I don't think it ever, when I was out in the States, I don't think I ever felt that, ever. I had nobody out there that I would class as my best mate or anything like that, if that makes sense. So when I came back and I went out with the boys, and I was just like, this just feels right, this feels better. And then the funny thing is, I was a bit scared with golf because I'd played it for years, constantly playing it 5, 6, 7 times a week, and that sounds like a problem. It's a first world problem. I get that before anybody jumps in. But yeah, playing it constantly all the time, and I thought, you know what, I'm going to take a break from golf. I'll take a few months off. I came back in January. Season doesn't really start till April, May, and I thought, well, do you know what, I'll take a few months off and I'll not go back to it. Didn't play golf for 3.5 years, like at all. I played 2 rounds of golf in 3.5 years, and both of them were drunken golf days. That golf was a consequence of the day, not actually golfing.
A conscious decision to go and play golf.
No, it was like, do you want to come to this drunken golf day? And I was like, drunken? Yeah. So didn't play at all. And then the usual story, I was quite fortunate that a few of the boys I played with out in the States have went on to do well and make it and whatever else, which is great. But the watching the Masters, a few of the boys were playing, and then I decided to go to the driving range, pick it back up, and I'm now actively back playing again. But yeah, I had that kind of, it was about 3.5 years where I didn't play at all. The clubs were up the loft and didn't come back down. So
it's strange though, isn't it? I mean, it's kind of like, because it had become the job, then it's kind of, it's tied to that in your head, and then you kind of like, yeah, do I really, want to do this? And because it became the job, it wasn't what you loved about it in the first place.
Yeah, I dare say there's lots of people who do things, so singing or football or golf or whatever else. When your passion becomes your living and it becomes a job, you forget that you enjoyed it, if that makes sense. Like, it becomes a job, so it becomes the thing that you do to make money. So a lot of times, like if I was having a bad day in the office, for example, my release was to go play golf. My release from the office, or release from what I was doing, was to go and play golf and disappear in the golf course, and a lot of times put my headphones in and just kind of zone out type thing. But when you're trying to get away from the thing that makes you happy,
yeah,
does that make sense? Like, so like
totally.
When golf,
it was like that for me with music. I mean, I had to take, that's why I started doing business stuff away from the music industry, because the music industry stuff that I was doing, I was hating. I literally was like, yeah, you're taking the joy out of this for me, and I'm not enjoying working with anybody. And it's just like, I want to, if I'm making music, I want to enjoy doing it because it's my passion. That's what I love more than anything else. But if I'm hanging around with these people and the industry's like this, and it kind of like, no. So now I've come back to it, but on my terms and doing things that I want to do, and no, I don't want to do that.
It's probably the exact same for me. So I now have a job. And golf is back to being that thing for me where, so usually I play golf at 8, 9 o'clock at night when I get the little man down to bed. Got the golf course, there's nobody up there, stick my headphones in, sometimes take the dog up with me, and I just walk around the golf course and play golf, and it's back to being what it was for me, if that makes sense. And I now love playing golf again, like back to the point where I feel like that 16, 17-year-old kid that was just out playing because I loved the sport and whatever else. And I'm a little bit older than 16 or 17, so but yeah, so it's kind of went full circle for me. It's back to golf. Will never ever be a career for me again. It'll never be. I'll probably never work in the golf trade, if I'm being honest. Not even as a rep or whatever. So golf very much is now back to being my sanctuary or solace. Or some people meditate, some people go to the gym, some people do whatever it is that you do to kind of get yourself away from what you're doing. Golf is back to being that thing for me. Golf is back to being my thing.
Your happy place. Yeah.
Yes, very much, mate.
So work-wise, right?
Yes.
When did you start working in recruitment?
Not long after I came back. So I started, long story short here is, I came back and I used to manage a men's suit shop in Silverburn called Remus Yomo.
I know it.
And yeah, so it was a gaffer in Remus when I first came back, and I had worked I basically worked for a year in retail, and I worked at Christmas retail. So for anyone who's done this before, Christmas in retail is honking. You'll get like 1 or 2 days off in December if you're lucky, and it is the most manic, hectic, mental. And by the way, see anybody who works in retail at Christmas, doff my hat to you. It is an incredibly hard, difficult job. And effectively, what happened was I'd used a recruitment agency to fill my Christmas temps. So the Christmas temps I was having on, I used a recruitment agency to bring these people in. And when they came back in January to ask if we can do anything for you, and I was like, yeah, I don't need any staff, but you work in recruitment. So what does a ex-golf pro, ex-store manager do if I don't really want to do anything? And I very much had this kind of strange conversation where I had no idea what I wanted to do, no idea what I was doing, and I just back from the States and and obviously I never really intended to move back to Scotland, so this was all kind of like a little bit up in the air, and like I had no idea what I was doing.
Right.
And they basically said, do you fancy a career in recruitment? And I remember at the time thinking, I was way left field, hadn't thought about it. And I always remember saying, what do you need to work in recruitment? And they were like, just be able to chat, be a bit of a people person, and a good work ethic. And I was like, well, if that's all you need,
I'm your man.
I can do that. So started working in recruitment. Initially started working in kind of what I'm doing just now. So it's government recruitment, helping employ people back into work. And very quickly realised that in commercial recruitment, there was a lot more money to get made. And when I was chatting to a few of my mates who actually worked in recruitment, and I found out what they were doing for a job and realised very quickly it wasn't that different from what I was currently doing.
Right.
And I started approaching a few recruitment agencies, and I started working at an organisation called Search Consultancy, and very quickly started working with them. I was making a lot more money, but a typical life in recruitment, I was working 60, 70, 80 hours a week, constantly, flat out. Yes, the money was great, but it's not a life. And yeah, so I worked in mainstream recruitment for a number of years, and I then kind of set my own thing up for a little bit because I thought that was the better idea to do and get dragged back into effectively what I'm doing now.
Right. Yeah, I mean, it's interesting you're saying about, getting paid more money, but you're doing crazy hours and that's not life. And I think as we get older, as we all are, you kind of go, you know what, I want to spend more time with, your partner and whatever, and just you kind of go, that's life. Yeah, that's what the rest of the time is just like, I'm doing that to make money. Yeah, okay. And you want to enjoy what you're doing, obviously. But otherwise it's just, you get to 16, you're kind of like, oh right, yeah, I didn't actually spend my time with, my significant other and do the things that we wanted to do. And
look, I think part of the wake-up call for me was I saw that in my dad. So my dad's had a great career, my dad's done really well, but kind of missed out on a lot of stuff, especially for me growing up. And the world starts to change quite dramatically for me. So I met my partner, and we have a little legend who turns 2 in November. And I think that was the huge wake-up call for me, was that as great as that life was, and we had a lot of, when I grew up with my dad, we had stuff, nicer holidays, with a nicer house, whatever else. And I just always thought to myself, like, is that what I want? Or what? And I suppose you have one of these kind of like, people talk about these all the time, but you have these kind of like life moments when you have a chat with yourself and whatever else. And I just kind of thought, I don't actually think that's what I want from my life. I mean, this isn't a dress rehearsal, so
yeah, exactly.
So yeah, so I've kind of started to look at my life very, very differently, and start to look at what is actually important to me. What is the part that's the driving force for me? What is the part that makes me want to get up in the morning? And unfortunately, it's not money. I am still driven money. I still want to have a good life and live a decent life, and I'm very, very motivated. And I think playing golf professionally, whatever else, that competitive nature never ever leaves you. So I'm still very competitive and still want to have a better life, but I've structured that differently now as far as what I give more importance to in my life, rather than working crazy hours to make crazy money.
Yeah, I mean, and I think it's just kind of working out what it is that you want, and then kind of going, all right, I'm not going to be available then. And especially with technology, with phones and all this kind of thing, just because somebody can call you at 11 o'clock at night or message you at 24 hours a day doesn't mean you need to respond.
Correct.
And I'm actually getting a lot better at tuning out the weekend. I mean, especially with the music side of things, whenever I was gigging all the time, that's you work at the weekends. So in my head, it's kind of hard not to think of the weekend as the time when you work. So, but now I'm
programmed that way.
Yeah. So now I kind of switch off, and I'm more like, no, I'm actually, it's okay. You're actually allowed to give yourself time off. And I think as well, like the business model in terms of what it is, how I make my money is different as well. So it's like, I'm not looking at my diary and needing to have it filled with gigs or certain things. It's kind of like I tend to do larger project kind of stuff now. So you just kind of like, it's everything about the way I work is actually just different. But I think it's giving yourself permission, giving yourself permission.
I think for me, like I was talking to somebody about this the other day, Greg. For me, I don't mind telling people this. I make quite a bit less money than what I used to make, but I'm a lot happier now than I've probably ever been in my life. So even when I had the materialistic life of playing golf professionally in Florida and living in Florida, and it's not a bad life, but was I happy? I mean, I look back on it.
Happiness is the currency.
So, and that for me is one of the things when I look back and think, yeah, but life was great. And I'm like, yeah, but I wasn't happy. So, so when I look at it now and I've got my little boy and we spend a lot of time together, and I'm now back to enjoying golf and great relationship with my partner, we're engaged, going to get married soon, move into a new house in 4 weeks' time. I just look at everything and think, life now is what I think life should be, as in like I'm a lot happier in what I'm doing, even for the job I've got now. So I help unemployed people back into work. It's a hugely satisfying job that when I do my job that I get paid to do, I'm also helping unemployed people back into work. So for example, an hour before we come on this podcast, mate, I got a guy before, he's been unemployed for 2.5 years. He's got 2 young kids. He's been really struggling with life. And he's got a job in a cafe, albeit he's only worked in there for 1.5 years. But he phoned me like ecstatic with, "Oh my God, thank you so much for this." And I kept saying to him, "It's my job. Like, you don't you thank me. It's not like."
But it's not like, I don't know, you're not a debt collector, or
yes.
It's not like you're phoning up some giving people bad news or some shit.
Yeah.
It's just you're giving them the good news. I'm actually giving you a chance of having a life here,
Oh, very much, mate. And I think that's where when I take the whole kind of, I'm talking big pictures up, when I take the whole package in, and I've got a great relationship with family and my kid and my little dog and golf and various other things, what I do now for a living fits very much in with, because I'm a big believer that if you do the right things by the right people, it's not a coincidence that I've started, since I've adopted that attitude in my life, that my life, I think, has got better.
Yeah.
I feel as if I've got luckier in life. But whether it's, some people call it karma, some people call it whatever, but I'm just a big believer that if you do the right things and conduct yourself in the right manner, it's not a coincidence that good things happen to more people who do things like that, as opposed to trying to be snidey and trying to double cross someone or whatever else. It's not a coincidence that bad things. It's not a coincidence for me that my life has managed to hugely turn around when I started to look at things differently.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So, a couple of years from now, any idea where you want to be?
So it's funny, mate. For the first time in my life, I've probably not really thought about that. I'm very much enjoying the present. I'm very much enjoying what I've got. I'm
wondering if that's kind of a consequence of the whole pandemic thing, because like everybody's like, "Oh, my 5-year plan," and there's this and that kind of thing, and you're like, yeah, but guess what? This gets in the way, and you can't plan a damn thing. You don't know what's going to happen.
Greg, I had a team meeting about this morning, actually. So we've, as the world's starting to open back up and we're coming out of the tier system and blah, 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 we've arranged a face-to-face jobs fair. And usually, so this jobs fair is meant to happen at the end of September. Given the fact that we're in July, I would usually be stressed out my box, and I was trying to make sure this is all planned and organised and various other things. But we're kind of chatting this morning to say that jobs fair on the 29th of September that we're supposed to be hosting, I don't actually know what it's going to look like, because I don't know if we're still going to be in tier systems. I don't know if it's going to be X amount of people to a room, if we need to space out 2 meters, if we need, I don't know any of that stuff. And strangely, I'm all right with it. Like normally, Greg, I quite like things where, so for this jobs fair, I would say, like, I need to have that, and I'll do this, and I'll plan this, and blah, blah, blah. And I know there's a lot of people struggle with it. Strangely for me, I'm all right with it. Like, I'm all right not knowing.
I think we have to be more adaptable. I mean, that's the thing. I mean, human beings generally are fairly adaptable. You know, we just eventually kind of get on with it. But I think the people who are doing best through this whole period are the people who've been just, you know, okay, right, all right, that's what's happening there. You know, just go with the flow, kind of.
Greg, it was part of the reason for me coming into work with People Plus as an organisation. My previous employer had a lot of success doing things a certain way for ages, and then obviously the pandemic came along and kept trying to do the same things that they had success with in the past. And I completely get it, because what you were talking about earlier on, your brain's wired to know that works well. But the world is, it's just very different now. So, and I think, especially for me, who hosts networking events and various other things and chats to businesses every single day, the businesses that I can see thriving, doing well, or whatever, are the businesses that were willing to adapt, willing to pivot. Even like yourself, Greg, like, so the stuff that you're doing is quite different from what you were doing probably 18 months ago. But it's, and again, there's different ways to look at things. There's people who look for problems and people who look for solutions. And I think the people that have found solutions in certain things, so for example, new business ventures or new things that, so for example, you could create a product that you probably wouldn't have thought about 18 months ago that you now promote very heavily, because that's the way the world is now. And yes, there's some trades and businesses that, like, the pandemic has just battered them. If you own a restaurant, for example, there's nothing you can do because the government is, so events, restaurants, things like the government has absolutely kiboshed. But there's certain businesses that, even for you, I mean, your industry itself has been absolutely decimated, but there's certain people who have still been able to keep an income coming. They've still been able to grow the business, pivot the business, change things. And for me, that was part of the reason for coming to People Plus, was when I spoke to them, part of the reason for them bringing me on was they wanted my ideas. They wanted me to talk to them about, like, we've kind of done this for so long and don't really know what to do. So we're very open to different ways of doing things. And the great thing for me when I started with People Plus, there's lots of things that we've tried. Some of them haven't worked. Some of them just were kind of dead in the water pretty much straight away. But for me, it was just that mindset of, do you know what if it works? Not, oh, that will not work because. It was always the mindset of, well, yeah, if that works, then we can do this, and if that works, we can do this. And there's lots of things we've managed to change and grow through failure sometimes. Being able to look at things and think, do you know what, that didn't work, and then in hindsight you look back and think that was never going to work. But just even having that mindset of that freedom to try something, and if it doesn't work, do you know what, not killed anybody. We've not done anything drastic, and we move on. So,
you know, we couldn't have this chat without mentioning Coffee at the Castle, which is the networking event that you host on a Thursday morning at 11 online.
Thursday at 11 o'clock.
Tell us a little bit about that. I mean, obviously, this was an event that happened in the real world beforehand, but then it's gone online, and I mean, and it's so funny because it's an event that I would see that, you know, you would post on Eventbrite, and I'm like, I really should get across that, but because of the location and all that kind of thing, I was like, I never did. But to do it virtually, then I'm kind of like, this is easy for me, you know, and it's something I would never have gone on or it would have
Yeah.
been difficult for me to do anyway.
Yeah, so I think the Coffee at the Castle thing and the evolution of Coffee at the Castle is something I'm actually really proud of. I'm really proud of what it's became, even though it's not strictly by design. The success of the event. So Coffee at the Castle was a networking event we originally set up in Renfrewshire. My golf club that I'm a member of is in a pretty affluent area, and there's a lot of business owners at the club. And we originally thought that we'll set this up and we'll get just an avenue for business owners to get together and hopefully do a bit of business together. And the event was growing arms and legs, and it was kind of going. It was going great guns. It was an event we held every single month, and eventually, what happened was the pandemic came, and on March 23rd last year, we were supposed to have an event, and I had been on, at the time it was Google's Teams meets, and kind of thought, could we? Like, am I being ridiculous here to think that this could be done through a virtual format? Like, have I officially lost my marbles now? And I remember the first event, I thought, you know what, we'll stick it in Eventbrite. We'll see what happens. We'll put on 35 tickets on Eventbrite. And it's a free event that we host, so it's not a cost to anybody. But I thought we'll do it through Eventbrite. And if we get a dozen people come along, that's great. 2 days later, I got an email from a client saying, "Dan, I can't book a ticket for the event. I think Eventbrite's down." And I was like, I don't know. I still get the emails coming in. It looks as if it's working to me. Found out that within a day, just over a day, the event had sold out. And I'm thinking, all right, so we're doing this. This is actually happening.
Yeah.
And the first event, I suppose when I look back on it, the first event itself was everyone kind of thinking, so how do we do this? Like, what do we do? Yeah. Like what happens here? Like, do we talk now or do we not talk now? Do we go on mute or like what do we do here? So it was literally just an event where I allowed people to come on, give their 60 seconds who they are, what they do, how they add value, etc., etc. And the event was a big success. And then we weren't doing a lot for lockdown. So I thought, rather than waiting for the next month, I'll just put one on next week because I wasn't really doing much myself, a bit like everybody else. And then it's just next week and next month and the following month and the following month. And then, I don't know if you remember this, like it was getting to the point where the tickets were going on sale at 9 o'clock on a Thursday and they were sold out by 9:10, which I just find that comical. Like, I just found that mental because it was never, like, we'd never designed the event, but we weren't marketing it heavily. It wasn't something that we were trying to really push. I just think we found something that worked. And a lot of people really appreciated it because we couldn't meet face to face. We couldn't really do anything else. So it was either that or nothing. And then kind of over the last, 14, 15 months, whatever it is, since we've been into the virtual world, the event has changed and tweaked and adapted. And it really, the event itself, I've been really fortunate to have guys like Kenny DL and Niall Rackman that they do the technical stuff in the background. I am literally just the guy who comes on and talks a load of nonsense. They're the guys who actually kind of do all the technical stuff to make it work and whatever else. And because the event itself is very much created for everyone else, it's very much created for people to come together. So I've taken everyone's feedback on board. So through the year and a bit that we've been doing this, people saying, "Dan, do you think we can maybe do more of this or less of this or tweak this or change this or add this or whatever else?" And that's effectively what's happened. And a bit like I was chatting about earlier on, there's a couple of things we tried with Coffee at the Castle that just didn't work as well. So we don't do them next week.
I think the thing is, well, I mean, sorry to interrupt, just
sorry.
I don't think you should undersell yourself too much here, Darren, because I mean, at the end of the day, I come along to that event looking forward to every week because I know you're hosting, and it's because of your personal style and how you do it that I'm there. It would be different if it was somebody else hosting and it wouldn't be the same. So I mean, yes, Niall and Kenny, if you're doing the technical side of things, but it's your people skills that bring the event together and why people are there. So I mean, I wouldn't undersell yourself. There you go.
No, I massively appreciate that, buddy. But I think for me, I look at these things. If I'm going to host it, I look at these things and think, what would I want in an event? So if I was attending the event, what would I want? What would I want to experience? And for me, and I think we've kind of managed to kind of nail this, is it's a light-hearted event, but it has a serious undertone. It has we have the point of, yeah, we're there to bear each other and blah, blah, blah. But it doesn't need to be stuffy. Like, we don't need to be like this kind of formalized, like this happens here and this happens here and this happens here. We kind of go with the flow a little bit. Sometimes it runs over. Sometimes it's a little bit short. So, but
yeah,
I
find
think
that highly structured thing just does my head in, you know.
it doesn't work for me, mate.
Yeah.
So, and I think that's where I suppose my personality lends itself well to that, is that I tend to like to kind of go with the flow a little bit.
And the icebreaker thing for me, I mean, I was talking to somebody about this recently. It was Karen Benny, and I was saying that every time I'm waiting for you to announce what the icebreaker question is, because I'm like, right, what bit can I do? You know, I'm working out some ridiculous comedy thing or something. Just like, what can I do that's just so ridiculous? Like, you would just not think of it, and really just to torment you, really, more than anything else.
Oh, mate, do you know the funny thing is, like, so obviously as the host, there's been, you probably appreciate this, there's a couple of moments where my finger has been hovering over the mute button for some people, as a conversation starts, and you think, where are you going with this? Like, what route are you taking here? And even the ice breaking thing, like, so I quite happily admit this, I stole the ice breaking thing from someone else. I attend on a Friday, Glasgow City Chambers. The team at the Chambers host a networking event called the WG Chat, and I went on to it one day, and they had this ice breaking question. I thought, that's a great idea. Brought it to Coffee at the Castle, and it's been a huge success. And I think that's where, again, when it comes to these networking events, we're still very much in the infancy of what we can actually do with them, and where they can go, and how we can drive them and change them and adapt them and whatever else. And I think that's where we're all kind of learning from each other. So I think we're at the point where you've done that and it worked. Great, I'm going to use it if you don't mind. And also things like, there'll be certain things that I've done. I've had a few people asking me about hosting events, what works and what doesn't work, and I've been able to say to them, like, we tried that. I thought it was going to be great, and it just didn't work. It didn't tie in for whatever reason.
I think the thing is, for me, as somebody who would do a lot of events in the real world.
Yep.
The thing for me is there's just things that an awful lot of musical things just don't translate. You just can't really do them. So although the entire time through lockdown, I've been doing Zoom choirs with the Maggie Center. I do choirs with them. It's horrendous. I mean, it's not of any musical benefit whatsoever, and it just, because of the time delays and all this kind of thing. Is everybody singing together? No, it's horrendous. But what it does do is it creates that connection, and it keeps people connected. Yeah. And certainly with a lot of people in that situation, they haven't been able to see other people, and and they literally have been locked away really from everybody. And that's been the important thing. It's been the human connection more than anything else. So for me, it's like, yeah, it'll be great to go back to doing certain things. And don't get me wrong, I mean, there's an awful lot that I will never go back to doing. It was a perfect time for me to stop doing a bunch of things that I kind of got roped into.
Yep.
And I was doing like a lot of, small community projects that I just didn't want to be doing anymore. And then when lockdown happened, I'm like, and that's that done. And all it did was accelerate stuff. It just accelerated everything that I'm doing now. I was doing. It's just put more of a focus on it.
I've said this quite a few times to people. Everyone keeps talking about like this kind of new world that we're in, and call it whatever you want. I'm a believer that we were probably heading in this direction anyway, but someone just pressed the accelerator, and
Absolutely.
That's it. This is the world that we were going to be living in anyway. But unfortunately, it's a global pandemic that has accelerated the process of getting there. And even things like we're chatting about virtual networking. I mean, 18 months ago, virtual networking wasn't even a term. It wasn't it wasn't a thing that we spoke about. And even when I held the first one, I remember like having anxiety, thinking, are we actually doing this? Like this is like just a bunch of people on a call networking together. Because that's, and I think this is where, for a lot of people, the brains had to be rewired, because what is possible is very different now. And even like so for me, if someone said to me a networking event, I could tell you exactly what a networking event shouldn't look like. And it never involved a laptop.
Yeah. And I think this is the thing for me with, when at the start of lockdown, I started doing seminars, webinars, I don't know, really, for Business Gateway, and I was doing that kind of thing. I was like, all right, okay. And there was the nervousness of, is the technology going to hold up, and just so you're able to do what it is you want to do. And I made this sort of vow to myself that, okay, if I'm going to be doing workshops and all that kind of thing, it needs to be a certain way, and I want to do it so that it's going to fit with my brand and all that kind of thing, in terms of I want to present it a certain way.
Yep.
So actually through Coffee at the Castle, that's how I got to meet Niall, and Niall helps me with my workshop. So he does all the back end stuff, and he runs the slides and all that kind of thing, so that I can just show off, I can just do my thing and present. And I think that's just such a huge thing in terms of being able to understand the medium that you're in, and this is what's going to work, and this is how we can do this so that it can be as smooth as possible. And I think the thing is, there's ways that we can do that. Like, for example, when I'm doing a workshop, being able to do breakout rooms and stuff like that, you know, it's just such an easier way to kind of break up a room, rather than, okay, you guys go and sit at that table and you go sit over there, and there's all this hubbub and noise. You do get that focused attention with that one person, which I think
absolutely. I mean, and I think that's where, if you look at it, there's been certain do you remember the platform Remo that came out quite quickly?
Yes. Farah Networking, she does her networking thing on Remo.
Yeah, so I think like Remo's probably the closest you'll get to traditional networking done through a virtual format. And I think that's where, for me, when I looked at what we're doing, and I thought, if we're going to make it virtual, kind of rip the rule book up a little bit as far as what we're doing and what we're not doing. Would we want to continue down that road that we know works, or could we look at something different? Could we do things differently? I mean, I've thought about this. Like, so Coffee at the Castle will go back to face-to-face at some point. And it's probably going to be a once a month event. We'll still host the virtual events every week, but it'll be a face-to-face event once a month. And it might be a traveling tour. And then I thought, like,
literally just going to go around castles.
Ooh. How good would that be?
I think that's the plan. Literally, it's a tour of castles.
A tour of castles. By the way, there might be some leg in that. I think
I'm not kidding. I'm like, that's Coffee at the Castle. What castle is
it? So I think what I was thinking about was the way the new networking events work, where everyone kind of comes in, gets their 60 seconds, and then you pop into breakout rooms. Could you do that face to face?
This is where I think, obviously it's great to meet people face to face, but you do have that. This is the thing that we're virtual thing. The whole virtual thing is so much better. You don't get stuck in the room with some guy called Alan, who's an accountant, for some interminable amount of time, and you can't escape him.
Mate, we've all been in that situation where you're literally almost in a headlock with some of them, and you're kind of looking across the room, and I see Greg Friel across the room, and I'm like,
"Oh, hello, save me.
Greg!"
And that's the thing, it's just kind of like, oh my God. And this is the thing where you have the breakout rooms. I'm like, there's only 5 minutes here. It's only 5 minutes. And you're literally looking at the countdown timer, like, I can keep it going.
So this is something I've genuinely thought about. And by the way, if anybody's still listening to this like an hour later, I'd be quite keen to get your comments below. If we go back face to face, do we go back to what we know we've done in the past, or do we do a kind of new format whereby I'll turn around and say, you breakout room, you breakout room, you breakout room, and then we pop it in there for 5 minutes and you come back out. So it's like so it's just looking at it differently, thinking,
are we going to do like a real world version of a virtual networking event?
And that's kind of what I was thinking about. And again, it goes back to that thing, could we? And it's maybe something I've thought about this and thought, if we try it and it doesn't work.
Because I think this is one of the things that I think really works about the Coffee at the Castle thing is, and this is what you could not do in the real world, is like whenever everybody comes on at the start and you've got that, 7 to 10 minutes of just everybody's coming on and getting set up, and everybody can just chat and everybody's not muted, and there's just, you can talk to everybody in the room at that precise moment. If somebody wants to say something, if that was in a real room, you'd be shouting.
Greg, can you imagine? Everyone! Hello, I need to tell you something. And then everyone would think that is the rudest guy in the world.
Exactly, and it's just, whereas it's literally just, and this is where I think it works, because the informality of it is just, everyone's just like, how you doing? Right, all right, chat. And it's like we're all in a wee kind of like, I don't know, just kind of, huddled together, just having that little chat. And I think that's what makes it strangely, it's what makes it more personal.
Oh, very much so, mate. And I think that's where, like, especially if you get into a breakout room with someone and it's you and one or two other people, you've only got 5 minutes. Mm-hmm. So you need to chat, like you need to get that. It's not just like, oh, I'll just stand here and I'll look at my feet and I'll shuffle about and I'll do this. And because it's like, we've all been there, we've all been to networking events where we left the networking event and think, what did I actually get out of that today?
Yeah.
I've probably walked away with 10 business cards, and if you handed me one of the business cards, I'd probably struggle to tell you who that person was.
Yeah. But you are looking at that person and there's more focused attention on that person, and there's more, oh, I'm gonna have a one-to-one. I mean, I do so many more one-to-ones now than I ever did from networking.
Mate, do you know what? One of the things I've argued with people as well is there's an argument to say that, like, so take my shed, for example. If we met in the village, you would never know that I have an office built in the back of my garden.
Mm-hmm.
Ever. Whereas now you can see the fact that you can see my office, you can also see the fact that I've got a load of golf crap behind me.
Mm-hmm.
And people can see things that,
well, I mean, with me, you just
see
massive pictures of myself. I mean,
which is pretty much the same thing, mate.
I'm still looking into getting that 3D sculpture for the front garden. I'm looking at.
I can't believe you've not just went ahead and done it.
I am actually. I'm wanting to see about doing it, even just for like some cheap ass version of it, just to see my wife's face. I just think the least I'm going to do is put a roller banner in the front garden and take a photograph.
Greg, genuinely, we're not going to get. I mean, it's not going to result in divorce, and it's very much one of these things where your wife is married to you. It's not like she's going to do.
Well, this is the woman who got me this for my birthday.
Love, genuinely, mate. Like,
it's, hold on, other way. It's pictures of me.
She is nothing if not aware of who Greg Friel is.
Yes.
Look at that. Look at that. You know, the best part is, mate, I've got the exact same blanket covered in a 1-year-old's face.
I thought you actually were going to tell me you had the same blanket, but for your dog. I thought that's what you were going to say.
You know, it's funny, like, so when I was at the website that was doing that, everyone had pictures of their dog constantly. And I'm like, oh, my child will go on that.
Yeah. I swear to God, my wife got that, and there's about 3 for my 50th. She got, that was for Christmas, but for my birthday, she got Dr. Friel socks. So literally the picture of me as the doctor, like on socks, and like about 3 or 4 things with my face on it. I'm kind of like, and this is why I'm married to this woman.
This is why.
Exactly. It's just like she understands the ridiculousness and accepts it. And yeah. That's how it is. Anyway, Darren, we could blather on for hours here, but I'm pretty sure nobody's listened all the way to the end.
Yeah, I'd be shocked, amazed, and flabbergasted if they were.
But
if you have listened to the end, put the comment yellow below, and we'll see who's actually listened to the end.
Absolutely. Right, absolutely. This will be interesting. But can I tell you, absolutely fascinating talking to you, sir, and always a good blather. And thank you for joining me today. And I'll
loved it, mate. Thank you very much for the opportunity, bud.
All right, cheers. Thank you.
Cheers, mate. Bye bye.